Thank you, Mrs. Maseka, for that wonderful prayer. At this moment, may I please ask everyone to be upstanding as we wait for the live streaming of the national anthem.
Stand and sing, O Zambia, proud and free, land of wake and joy in unity, victors in the struggle for their right. We've won freedom's fight, all one, strong and free. Africa is our own motherland, fashioned with and blessed by God's good hand. Let us call her people, join as one, brothers under the sun, all one, strong and free. One land and one nation is our cry. Dignity and peace needs Zambia's sky. Like a noble eagle in its flight, Zambia, praise to thee. Oh, one, strong and free. Praise be to God. Praise we, bless our great nation. Zambia, Zambia, free men we stand under the flag of our land. Zambia, praise to thee. Oh, one, strong and free.
Take our seats. So we'll do a round of introduction so that you can just know each other and where we are coming from. It's also for the purpose of networking and ensuring that we get to know each other. So I'll start from this end. Please give us your name, where you're coming from, that is your institution or the organization that you work for. Oh, sorry, I'm being told I need to walk backwards. So you tell us your name, the institution or organization that you're coming from, as well as what you do there. So we'll start from this end on my left.
My name is Robert. I'm coming from Jakarta. I'm the behalf member of Transparency Action. I work for Kyoto Protocol as NGO.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is enrichment. I'm from the police manager.
Thank you.
Such as
Good morning, everyone. My name is Westana.
again, this doesn't I think that's that. And so members My name is Frank. Morning, colleagues. My name is Richie and for guidance. Morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa Matilda, Assistant Programs Officer at Zambia Climate Change. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Good morning, everyone. Morning. My name is so I can answer.
Thanks, Kevin.
Morning, my name is Martha. I'm here. I'm very good. I'm the analyst from good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa. I'm the climate change. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jackie.
And my name is Sandy Skaze. I'm the Environmental Governance Officer and the Transparency International Zambia. I am so impressed that we've got musicians here that they let us play the national anthem on the national. They could have just volunteered for the guitarist, but a musician, they could have sung for us and made this very more entertaining. So at this moment, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to ask Mr. Maurice Kenyande, the Transparency International Executive Director, to come forward and give us his welcoming remarks.
All right, good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen. I know that our guest of honor is yet to join us, but I will still acknowledge him in absentia. He will be joining us soon. His advance party is already here. That's the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Green Environment and Green Economy and Environment, Dr. Daud Chichiwamba. Then also acknowledge the Director, Risk Management at Ministry of Finance and National Planning, Ms. Barafina Muba. Chancellor, if she's here with us. Also the Director for the Forest Department in the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment. Members of the Parliamentary Caucus on Environment and Climate Change. I think I heard in the introduction some people from the National Assembly. Other senior government officials who may be present with us this morning. Fellow civil society organizations. I have seen quite a number of colleagues from within civil society. Representatives of our transparency action groups. I think you heard quite a number during the introductions. Let me also acknowledge Mr. Jason Kamanga, who is a member of TIZ all the way from Chipata. Our all-weather friends from the media. Let me just say, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm very honored to have this opportunity to welcome you to the launch of our much anticipated report on the gap analysis and corruption risk vulnerability assessment of climate and carbon finance mechanisms in Zambia. Today marks a significant milestone, as after nearly a decade of dedicated research and collaboration, we are proud to present the findings of this very comprehensive report. The gap analysis and corruption risk vulnerability assessment was conducted under a TIZ project, namely the Climate Change Integrity Project, or CGIP in short, which is part of our broader climate change, environment, and sustainability program focus area. This project is a cornerstone of our 2023 to 2027 strategic mandate, aimed at strengthening transparency and accountability in climate finance, land, and environmental governance. The CGIP, a 3-year initiative funded by the Waverly Street Foundation, with support from the Transparency International Secretariat in Berlin, is dedicated to enhancing transparency, inclusivity, and accountability in Zambia's climate policy and governance frameworks, with an emphasis on 3 main areas, namely climate policy, climate action, as well as climate justice. Under climate policy, the aim is to promote transparency, accountability, and inclusivity in the policy-making process. Under climate action, the focus is on enhancing accountability, integrity, and oversight of climate-related initiatives at both global and local levels. And under climate justice, the focus is on achieving better justice outcomes for those affected by environmental crimes, as well as corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to share some key insights from the report that we are launching today. Overall, the report evaluates Zambia's legal and regulatory frameworks and associated corruption risks, particularly in carbon markets and climate forest initiatives. The gap analysis identifies vulnerabilities in climate finance and traditional and trading mechanisms, especially considering the growing interest in carbon trading in Zambia. It highlights the significant amounts of funding required for climate mitigation and adaptation, which in turn elevates corruption risks in these specific areas. But before I go into the substantive key findings, of which I'll just give a summary, it's important to recognize the strides made by the government of Zambia through the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment in addressing climate change. Significant progress has been made, particularly with the climate change bill, which is expected to be enacted into law later this year. Additionally, the ministry has approved guidelines for mitigation activities under the Paris Agreement and the carbon market framework for Zambia, aimed at enhancing regulation and mechanisms for carbon markets. In 2023, the government further demonstrated its commitment by launching the National Determined Contributions Implementation Framework, aligning national and sectoral policies to guide Zambia towards a climate resilient, low carbon economy. We also note that on 18th September, which is just about 2 weeks ago, the ministry launched the Eastern Province Jurisdictional Sustainability Landscape Program, which is a $63 million project supported by the World Bank. As TIZ, we will take keen interest in this initiative in order to advocate for transparency, integrity, and inclusivity, and for all these elements to be applied across the 3 program components in order to ensure equitable climate financing to rural communities within the Eastern Province. Allow me to now return to some of the substantive findings of the report that we are launching today, of which I would like to highlight 4. The first one is that one of the highlighted risks in the report pertains to the climate finance corruption risk vulnerability assessment, where there is a lack of transparency in climate finance due to insufficient checks and balances, creating the potential for misappropriation of funds. Secondly, with regard to policy and decision-making capture, there is a real risk that elites and community leaders may unduly influence decisions for personal gain without consulting affected communities. Thirdly, the report further highlights the risks related to information disclosure with corrupt practices such as requests for personal benefits before signing agreements for carbon credits being a matter of a very grave concern to us. And last but not least, there are also risks related to benefit sharing transparency, which include rent-seeking behavior by officials or leaders and the exclusion of women in community boards, leading to projects that don't meet women's priorities as well as their needs. There will be a more detailed presentation highlighting all these risks and vulnerabilities as highlighted in the report. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this moment to thank the TIZ team, particularly the CGIP project team, as well as the TI Secretariat team based in Berlin, and also our esteemed stakeholders from the government, the private sector, our fellow CSOs, as well as other organizations whose hard work made this assessment and analysis possible. I also express gratitude to all the respondents who contributed to this very important research. As we launch the report today, I urge everyone to engage deeply with its findings and to consider how we can work together in order to drive meaningful change in this area. I especially call on the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment to heed the report's recommendations, particularly in light of the recently launched Eastern Province Jurisdictional Sustainability Landscape Program, which I have made reference to. This initiative, ladies and gentlemen, offers a vital opportunity for Zambia, and it is crucial that transparency, integrity, and accountability remain at the forefront of its implementation. With these few remarks, I would like to warmly welcome you all to this launch, and I thank you most sincerely for your attention. Thank you, and God bless.
I think we can do better than that. So basically, Mr. Maurice Nyambe was telling us to pay special attention to climate financing so that we can also play our role in ensuring that the funds that are coming to climate financing are used for the intended purposes. We all know, and we've all seen it from the COVID-19 pandemic, that when we have a catastrophe, more funds come in and abuse as well comes in. So as a result, as we are receiving more money to respond to the drought that we are having currently in the country, we have to make sure that we also play our roles as CSOs, government officials, community members, to ensuring that there's transparency, accountability, and integrity in the way the funds are being utilized. Thank you, Izzy, for those official remarks. That was a very beautiful presentation. At this moment, may I please ask Ms. Tabika Hagwindi, who's our climate change and environmental sustainability coordinator, to give us a full report of the assessment that we conducted. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much. I think we've seen keen interest in our report and its findings. So my presentation will give just an outline and highlights of our analysis and the report research findings. I am aware that we have some people who might not have participated in the assessment, but are here for the launch, which is great. So next slide, please. Okay, thank you very much. So the presentation outline will give an introduction to the research, the rationale of why we undertook this research, the methodology that we employed. Will give a highlight, really a flavor of the research findings, as well as a highlight of the recommendations. We will be distributing the full report for your audience this morning. Transparency International conducted this gap analysis, trying to look at the legal and regulatory frameworks, as well as the associated corruption vulnerabilities and risks of climate and carbon finance. We had a particular interest in carbon markets, particularly those of a forest to nature, given their prevalence in Zambia, but also the anticipation that we will see more carbon markets going forward as we try to grapple with the climate change crisis. So as you might be aware, for Transparency International Zambia, we are a governance institution and we promote anti-corruption in all our work. So this was the angle that we took in undertaking this research. In terms of the rationale for the research, which is on the next slide, we realized that climate change, it has emerged as a threat to our livelihoods and well-being as a people, both globally, regionally, and nationally. When you look at the research and some of the literature that was reviewed, we do see that there is an expected increase in climate finance flows globally, as well as an expected increase in carbon finance and carbon markets. For instance, our research shows that based on some sources, carbon markets are expected to quadruple in size. So that's increased by four times. That was between 2020 and 2021 to about $2 billion United States dollars. In terms of climate finance, when you look at low carbon investments, the need is steadily increasing for finance from about 8.1 trillion to 9 trillion. And then thereafter, that's between, that's to 2030. And then thereafter, climate finance needs are estimated to increase to over 10 trillion United States dollars from 2031 to 2050. So we see an increase in climate finance and carbon finance, of course, driven by the challenge that we're currently grappling with, being climate change. Because of this anticipated increase in climate finance, but also recognizing that climate change is a global crisis, it brings two factors at play. There's the urgency to respond to crisis, as well as the amount of funding involved in dealing with climate change issues. So this can actually worsen the corruption risks when you look at the interplay of those two, the urgency and the amount of funding. Further, when you look at the countries that are more susceptible to climate change and need climate finance, and you compare that with our corruption perception index, you will see that these countries are more vulnerable to corruption, and therefore it worsens the associated corruption risks in climate finance. When you look at the corruption risks and the vulnerabilities in climate finance, these also have the potential to undermine climate mitigation and adaptation measures. So meaning that communities might not get the benefits of whatever projects or initiatives that have been taken to address climate change. So given this global context and understanding, we undertook this research. We started from a global perspective of what are the trends for climate finance and carbon finance, and then we narrowed it down to our local context as Zambia in terms of the legal frameworks available at the time of the research. We tried to do an analysis in terms of budget allocation for climate finance, and then we also did a risk assessment. In terms of the methodology that we used, it was mostly qualitative in nature. We relied on desk-based literature review of government policy, instruments. We also looked at publications and reports related to climate change and climate finance issues. In addition, we had key informant interviews who we identified through purposive sampling to give us an insight in terms of their context, their expert opinions on this issue. So the data we collected, we reviewed, and for the research period, this started last year around August to about March 2024. So it was quite a lengthy process for us to get to this point. Still on the methodology, so we had a validation meeting with the key informants to review the research findings and get their feedback on what the research findings were speaking to. And this was done in October 2023 and facilitated by an independent consultant that we contracted to review this report. After that, and the changes were made, we also engaged our TI secretariat colleagues to have a look at the report and identify any issues or gaps that needed to be addressed. And then finally, we also had an internal process to have a look and review the report before we could launch it. So now to give just really a highlight of what you will see in the report that we're launching today. Next slide. In terms of the country-specific context, I think that would be more relevant to highlight. The legal and policy framework. The other slide. For the legal and policy framework, I think as we can work with this slide. So for the legal and policy framework, we acknowledge that Zambia is a party to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement, and we do submit the nationally determined contributions. We also, as my ED noted, we acknowledge that there has been progress with regards to the climate change bill, which will speak to issues to do with climate change, as well as potentially a climate change fund and the carbon market framework within the bill. Based on that and with interviews with the ministry, I think there's also indication to revive the national policy on climate change. What we currently have is the national policy that was developed in 2016. We also have issues to do with climate change, housing, environmental sustainability pillar of our 8th National Development Plan. And recently this year, we saw that the Ministry of Green Economy launched the National Green Growth Strategy. In terms of carbon markets and frameworks, just to highlight, there is the national strategy to reduce deforestation and forest degradation. There is the SI 66 of 2021, which is the Forest Carbon Stock Management Regulations. And here, this is where we see community forest management groups and given some mandate to manage carbon markets, particularly over forest nature. We also saw that the ministry last year launched part 1 of the carbon market framework, and this is based on the Paris Agreement, particularly Article 6, and looking at how they can evaluate proposed mitigation activities under climate change. When we analyze the climate finance and budgeting aspect, which was quite challenging for us, I think because before 2021, we did not have the Ministry of Green Economy, and really climate change was a cross-cutting issue. So it was difficult to try and track and trace climate funds for the study. So what we did is based our analysis after 2021, particularly when the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment was instituted, and using the budget figures from 2022, 2023, and 2024. So you will see that we, on this side, sorry, you see that we have the government total budget, and then below that we have the budget allocation to the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, and then the percentage of that allocation. You see that this has been almost consistent, around 0.47, 0.46% of funding. The table adjacent to it, we went into the output-based budgets for those 3 years. At the bottom, at the grand total, you will see that the grand total equals the Ministry of Green Economy budget grand total, so that 817 billion, 774, 812. But what we were particularly interested to see was on this table was what was the allocation from the government budget, domestic funding, what was the contribution from grants, cooperative partners, as well as project loans. So you see in terms of percentage domestic funding, when we did our analysis from 2023, from 2022, 23 to 24, you see that there is a slight increase in terms of the domestic funding from our budget allocation towards the Ministries of Green Economy. But in the report, you will see that before COVID, most of the financing to climate change was from cooperative partners based on our analysis. In terms of the key governance issues and corruption vulnerabilities coming from the key informant interviews, when we did a thematic analysis of these issues, what we saw as the prominent themes was the global focus and proactive motives in the climate change and climate finance space. So respondents and informants noted that climate change seems, and the agenda for climate change and finance is driven globally with very little input for local affected communities to influence those discussions. But also there is this increasing vulnerability in terms of the profit motives that are presented by the increased funding in climate finance. There was also risks related to undue influence, looking at the biggest emitters of greenhouse gas emissions and how they then influence the agenda globally, as well as to ensure that they continue to make profits as opposed to actually reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. This was also related to the risk of greenwashing, where it is very possible and likely that projects might be labeled green or climate friendly when in fact, when you analyze and get to the bottom of this, they are not climate friendly or they are not mitigating or adaptive projects. There was the issue to do with consultation, and this was also linked to technical knowledge. The research informants articulated that climate change, finance, and carbon markets are very technical fields, difficult to understand. So this sidelines them in terms of and limits the opportunities for them to participate in consultations, to participate in the process. Issues to do with accountability and management of funds. This was a governance concern and a vulnerability with regarding to how climate finance would be managed and opportunities to hold duty bearers to account. There was also an emerging theme around complaint mechanisms, particularly the awareness of these mechanisms. When you delve in, when you read the report, it was established that there are complaint mechanisms with regards to climate finance and carbon finance, but there was very little awareness of how those mechanisms could be accessed by local communities. As part of our research as well, next slide, we did a corruption risk assessment. And here I must mention that a corruption risk, as we would define it, is the potential for a corrupt act to occur as a consequence of weaknesses that are identified within a system or institution. We also administered the risk likelihood rating, and there we have the interpretation with the lowest being 0, marking impossible. From there, the green marked unlikely, the yellow possible, the orange likely, and the red almost certain. So this is the risk rating that we administered for the risk assessment, and key informants use this risk assessment to rate a number of risks that we identified with climate finance as well as carbon finance. Just highlight the key risks, especially those that were rated almost certain and likely. So in terms of starting with climate finance broadly, one of the risks highlighted or rated as high was the inadequate monitoring and evaluation systems in climate finance, which makes it very difficult and challenging to track the utilization of these funds. And because of that, this increases the corruption risks that actors with ill intentions will take advantage of the inadequacies when you look at the monitoring and evaluation systems in place. The other risk related to the lack of accountability mechanisms, and sometimes this is driven by the manner of climate finance. Like I say, climate change is a cross-cutting issue, and it was difficult for us to really place and track climate or in totality the climate finance available for the country, apart from using the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment as a proxy. But also there's the mechanisms for accountability are very limited in this space, and so it increases the risks of corruption in climate and carbon finance. The next risk also still relates to climate finance broadly. One of the highlighted risks, highly rated risks, was the host communities not being consulted in climate finance and carbon finance, and the risks to their livelihoods, particularly when you look at large-scale renewable projects or climate forest initiative projects. So the risk of land evictions and ultimately them not benefiting from climate finance and projects is really high. And this was rated so because when you look at our land tenure system, particularly for customary land, there are a number of gaps there that aggravate this risk. There was also a risk pertaining to gender and social barriers in terms of the climate finance framework, which can limit the participation of rural communities, women, persons with disabilities, particularly those who might not have access to the spaces for engagement. For carbon forest initiatives, carbon markets or trading, the risks that I will highlight in my presentation, but there are a couple in the report. There was a risk of policy capture identified by leads to ensure that policies benefit them, and acknowledging that in Zambia we do not have what we do have are voluntary carbon markets as opposed to compulsory carbon markets. Respondents noted that there is an increase for what you would call carbon cowboys, was the word coming through to benefit from the system and looking more to make profits as opposed to ensure conservation and responding to climate change issues. But also the power that these people hold globally and nationally can actually influence policy as opposed to the power that local and affected communities hold. The other risks that was highlighted was issues to do with agreements and memorandum of understanding, and there was a risk that this would be signed without the communities being informed, and then afterwards this would not be disclosed. And this finding came through from different respondents, but also we saw this a lot in some of the reports conducted nationally in the country, including a similar one, a similar assessment done by the Parliamentary Committee on Environment. The risk of exclusion of women was still a recurring risk when you looked at the risks involved in carbon markets from forest initiatives. And it was that most of these spaces, when you go to the community level or the local level, most of these decision-making spaces are dominated by men, and women do not participate effectively in terms of decision-making, including on how benefits from these projects are utilized. The last risk I will highlight in this presentation was the risk that the carbon credits might be overstated or revenues from carbon credits understated. And this ties back to how complex and acknowledging how complex carbon markets are, including the ones from forest initiatives, in terms of how the calculations are done, from the baseline to all the way to the monitoring, reporting of these carbon credits, but also the risk of understatement of revenues was coming from communities who emphasize that they typically don't know how much in terms of the total credits value worth that has been sold, So what they get is just the percentage of the proceeds, but they're not able to tally that in terms of what is the overall cost that has been made from these carbon credits that have been sold. So there is that risk of being overstated or understated. Like I said, when you read the report, in terms of the corruption risk assessment, we look at carbon finance more broadly, and then we delve more into carbon forest initiatives, looking at issues to do with decision making, issues to do with transparency, disclosure, and benefit sharing, and we identify a number of risks in our report. In terms of the recommendations, I believe the report has a total of 10 recommendations, and we really tried to narrow it down and make it as high level as possible. This presentation highlights 5. One of the recommendations is definitely the enactment of the climate change law, and hopefully this would really refine carbon trading regulations and guidelines, and kind of give overall guidance in terms of the carbon market as well as climate finance framework in Zambia. I think that is a much needed piece of legislation that we look forward to having. Another recommendation was to enhance communication and disclosure mechanisms for information related to climate finance and funds. The recommendation here is if we could have an available repository or register where we're able to see the total amount of climate finance by projects, as well as climate budget tagging. And hopefully this is something that the Ministry of Green Economy, working with the Ministry of Finance, can develop for the public to use. There's also a recommendation to ensure disclosure of information, including agreements, disclosure of benefit sharing plans to the community, and disclosure of the total worth of proceeds that are made from carbon projects, particularly to cooperating partners and private sector who might be the project proposers when you look at carbon projects. There is a recommendation to strengthen and enhance coordination of complaint mechanisms, and as stakeholders, the report identifies that there are a number of complaint mechanisms, some running parallel, and there would be a need to strengthen this, but also see how they can align with existing complaint mechanisms. And when you look at the recommendation, the role of civil society to raise awareness on the complaint mechanisms available. The last recommendation to highlight through this presentation was the need to enhance communities' understanding of climate and carbon finance concept. Some key informants described it, as the Wild Wild West, and really it is quite very technical field to try and understand both climate financing and carbon financing. So there is a huge knowledge gap between what technocrats know and understand and what a local community member in Shangongo or in Kazemba or in Chipata will understand in terms of what is climate finance, what is carbon finance, and then trying to link that to governance issues. So that is a task for our stakeholders. When you look at the report, there's also a role for civil society to play in terms of enhancing that understanding and awareness around climate change, finance, and carbon finance. All in all, that is the presentation, just really giving you highlights and the flavor of what our report findings are. I'm happy to take any questions at a later point. I'll hand it back over to my colleagues.
I
I believe that was a very comprehensive report. It looks at different aspects, looks at the private sector, looks at the community, looks at government. It also looks at the role that CSOs have to play. At this point, may I be allowed to acknowledge the presence of the Permanent Secretary to Green Economy and Environment, Dr. Dauti Chulamba. Saying you're welcome to our launch of the Corruption Vulnerability report under TIZ. So basically, from what Tamika was reporting, I picked out one point that I would just like to highlight. There are risks and vulnerabilities that were identified. And for me, a good report is a report that also provides recommendations and also provides the roles of the different people that were part of the assessment that they played. So I think I'm calling upon everyone here, everyone who's been invited to this meeting to take a very keen interest in the report that we'll be sharing later, and also to ensure that we play our role in ensuring that carbon financing and carbon markets are implemented according to the way the government has promised us to implement them. So may I be allowed to call upon the Director of Green Economy plus Climate Change to come forward and officially introduce the peers.
Thank you very much, Director of Programs. And I should also thank the President for a very rich presentation made. The guest of honor, Permanent Secretary, Minister of Green Economy and the Environment, Dr. Dauti Chulamba, the Executive Secretary, Executive Director for Transparency International Zambia, Mr. Morris Nyambe. And ladies and gentlemen, my role is simply to invite our guest of honor, Dr. Dauti Chulamba, to come and make his remarks. Yes, sir.
Good morning, everyone. The beauty with us teachers is that we shout, so whether there's a mic or there's no mic, we're going to speak. So it's good to have all of you here. It's a very important meeting for us. And as you understand, climate change is a multidisciplinary arena. So we can never have enough experts on the table. We need as many as possible different viewpoints. And when we come together in that manner, then we will have comprehensive responses to the problems that we face in this field. Of course, I have my prepared remarks here, but before I go into the prepared remarks, I thought I could just make a few comments based on the recommendations that have come out with. But mostly to start with, just thank you, TIZ, for coming in this space. Climate and carbon finance is a very opaque arena. Even for people who have gone to school, to really understand climate financing, let alone carbon trading, is a problem. What more the people out there? And this is why I'm saying we need as many partners on board as possible. When we go to the local communities, we must take this subject matter in the language that the local communities can understand. Because once we go there with acronyms, then we lose them. And also we must understand that ultimately, the real beneficiaries of carbon financing and carbon trading should be the local communities, because they're the ones who have taken care of the trees from time to memorial. Anybody who comes with a briefcase to invest, they just come to bring the money, but the owners of the resource are the local people. So TIZ, I just want to encourage you, if your budget allows, take a lot of interest in this space. If you can identify one or two young people who you can push in this arena to go and delve into the subject matter, you'll be more than happy. Happy to see you at hope and discuss and talk about these matters, so that even when I consult a report for you, you also have an in-house expertise to interrogate the report. So just to respond to some of the recognitions that you have made, one of which is the issue around the climate law. I'm happy to report to you that I think we are almost there. I think we should be getting the bill in Parliament. Not I think, this session that has started. And in terms of consultation processes, I think we did try our little bit from our end. We consulted widely to the point that we went out of our way to invite external stakeholders in the internal legislation activity, which is only the government. The issues we want to carry out for the board. And even at this stage, it's not yet over, it's not yet done. Once it's in Parliament again will reach out to several stakeholders. So you have an opportunity again at this level to go and make your contributions if you feel you've not had an opportunity to do so this far. So the climate law is coming. Communication and disclosure mechanisms, including MOUs, agreements, benefit sharing plans. The way carbon markets work across the world is that it has to be done transparently. And one way through which this transparency is done is through the monitoring, reporting, and verification mechanism. You have a register where every deal that you sign, you upload it for the public to see. Every agreement that you sign must be uploaded on this registry so that anyone of you can look at it and interrogate it, whether you feel it's user-friendly or it could be done better. So in that respect, we are doing our little bit. Just suffice to tell you that in Zambia, the Zambia Environmental Management Agency is a focal point for all things related to carbon. So they are our focal point. So again, working with various stakeholders, we are developing an MRV system at ZEMA, which we are hoping it will be up and running in the next few months. Developing a complete MRV system is costly, but what we're going to do is phase it. Whatever little we are able to do, we put it up and run, start moving. Benefit sharing, I'll reiterate the earlier point. The real owners of the resources that generate carbon is the tree that is going to suck carbon out of the atmosphere. That's where the carbon credit is going. It is the rural local communities who have taken care of these trees since time immemorial. If there's anybody who should get a real benefit, it's not you and me who are sitting in this application. It is the people out there. So what we've done is, yes, I agree. I think the presenter mentioned the fact that this far in Zambia, we are only working with voluntary carbon markets. Of course, it's not only in Zambia. It's because the compliance framework has not come out of the COP. Article 6 has not been finalized by the COP process or the politics around it. We are hoping maybe COP 59 can be finalized. So at the moment, it's mostly voluntary carbon markets that we're using. And here in Zambia, we've had a number of players in the voluntary carbon market space who are implementing projects. As government, we have received concerns from the community that there is no transparency, not much transparency in these projects. And most importantly, that the communities don't know their way. They don't know exactly how much to come to them. So what we've done as government, in order to address these issues of transparency, and by transparency, I mean, if an investor comes to do a carbon project in a district, everybody should come to the table, most importantly, including the communities. Sit down with the investor so that the investor will tell the communities how much investment is put into that, how that investment is going to work in order to deliver that. But most importantly, there should be a benefit sharing mechanism. When we sell the carbon credits, how much gross revenue out of that gross revenue, how much tax is going to be taken out of that money. When all the taxes are sorted out, how much money now goes to the investor? Because one thing we cannot run away from, carbon trading is a business. So the investor expects to get it. So how much is he going to get? But most importantly, how much is going to the local communities? So those things are supposed to be discussed transparently. As government this far, we received a lot of concerns from communities that there's not much transparency in this space. And what we have done as government is we have a pilot project in Eastern Province. We are attempting what we call jurisdictional approach. Jurisdiction is just a boundary. So for the case of Eastern Province, we are saying we want to take the whole province as a space where we are doing carbon projects. The reason we are doing that, we want to bring transparency. So what we are doing in the Eastern Province, we've gone to all the private developers who are already in the space. We as government in Eastern Province, we are also an investor. We have a carbon project there. So we nest all the investors, bring them together on the table. And we bring the local communities. First of all, we bring the local communities and all the players. We develop what we call a benefit sharing plan. This we have done for Eastern Province. And what that benefit sharing plan means is that the local communities and everybody else must accept, must say this is what we are doing. So it takes time to develop that thing through consultation process. So we took some time, Eastern Province, consulted the communities, consulted the investors. And at the end of the day, we have a benefit sharing plan for Eastern Province. 15% is going to the government and the project implementation units. 30% goes to the investors, or the nested investors. So depending on how much carbon credit each investor is going to bring on the table, that's how much is going to go. And then 55% of benefits, they have to go to the local communities. In that 55%, 5% goes to the traditional leadership as an individual, and 10% goes to the traditional leadership as an institution. The rest must go to the local communities. So from the government side, yes, we are aware there are issues there, but one way we're trying to fix that problem is this pilot program that we have on Eastern Province. And there we don't have room for failure. We must succeed, so that when we succeed there, we can probably upscale the project to other areas. The issue in carbon trading is there has to be transparency. So what we're doing in Eastern Province, for example, when we do the assessment of how much carbon we have captured, we are involved as government, the communities are involved. And then as governments, working together with the communities, we must go and look for a buyer of the carbon credits. When we find this buyer, we sit down and negotiate the price. After negotiating the price, if we agree, then we sign. The dilemma is that in the carbon space, nothing is fixed in concrete. Nothing is cast in concrete. Today the carbon price is very high, tomorrow it can collapse to zero. So on the government side, we are trying to bring in transparency in the system. The law is on its way very soon on how they can change. And it's done. We have done that, MRB, ZEMA. They're almost there. Again, to bring transparency in the process. But Transparency International just to encourage you, please, it's a good start. Let's go all the way. Identify young people. If you don't have them yet in the organization, look for interns in the university. We want real experts. We want a young man, young woman who's going to stand here and say, I am a qualified climate finance expert. We need those people. Qualified mitigation expert, qualified adaptation expert. We need them, not only for GIZ, but even for us as government. As government, we do polish, we are light on the academics or science of it, and that's where those experts come. Because at the end of the day, we just have the Zambia to make a contribution to this agenda. So I thought I could make those quick responses now as protocol demands. We should also speak to prepared remarks. So let me just do my prepared remarks. The Executive Director, Transparency International, Mr. Maurice Kenyebe, representatives of all development partners here present, senior government officials here present, representatives of different civil society organizations who are here. I can see some carbon players in here, different investors in carbon projects who are represented here. I can see some of you here. Members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to be here at this launch of the gap analysis of climate change and carbon finance corruption risk assessment report, which has been delivered by Transparency International Zambia. I wish to commend TIZ for this effort on climate finance and carbon finance. It adds a lot of awareness to our communities. So this is the right thing to do. As government, we have dissected this report, we have interrogated it, and we do appreciate the feedback that was brought to us from all the different stakeholders that we made in this process in terms of the key findings and the recommendations that we sent to us. One of the key findings that we have come back with is lack of comprehensive legislation on climate change. I think in a response, I've addressed this. The climate bill is in the oven. Very soon we'll have out of there. I've also explained that for this particular one, because of the interest that it has generated, that we go out of our way to do as much stakeholder participation as possible. Of course, it's possible that no matter how much we try to reach out, we may miss one or two, but we did try our best from our end. So we have also received a lot of written submissions from different sets of stakeholders on the same. So like I'm saying, it's only to the Parliament, and there again also you still have an opportunity to go and make your submissions. By conducting this corruption risk assessment, we now have a clear evidence based on your findings of the potential risks to climate finance, and we are better informed. And we can not overemphasize the need for empirical evidence if we want to make responsive policy to the problems that the community is facing. Ladies and gentlemen, the report has touched on the need for transparency. We totally agree with you. This is why one of our parties here is also trying to bring a lot of transparency to this space of carbon finance and climate finance. We are doing the MRV system in SEMA. That's the surest way that we're going to bring transparency. Because once that MRV system is up and running, then it means that every MOU that we sign, every agreement that we sign must have gone. Of course, for now, when we sign, we provide media and all that, but when the MRV is up and running, then we'll have the opportunity to see the contents of each MOU, each agreement. So, ladies and gentlemen, like I explained in my earlier remarks, climate change is not discriminatory. Climate change affects everybody, every sector of the economy. There is no sector of the economy that is not affected by climate change. So, if we have to find solutions to the problem, then we need everybody. Everybody has a need. We need the people for health. We need people for water. We need NGO, whatever an NGO, whatever area that NGO is focusing on, it is affected by climate change. So we need everyone. So that's why we encourage TIZ that we are moving this direction. So I commend you, TIZ, for this tireless effort and encourage you to continue. So now, as I conclude, I wish to express my sincere appreciation to TIZ and all the stakeholders for producing this report. I also extend my gratitude to our development partners and all those working tirelessly to support Zambia's journey towards dealing with the problem. climate change. Let us continue working together. I've already said it's a multidisciplinary, and we need support. With those few remarks, I now officially declare, I don't know whether we're going to launch at some point, but thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dauti Chongo, for that very insightful, those insightful official remarks. I think we appreciate the responses that we were able to give to the report. Everyone around here, I think, can testify that they were very interested in knowing how far we've gone with the climate change law. So we actually appreciate very much that soon it will be going to Parliament and be seeing some massive progress in terms of that. We also would like to thank you for ensuring that we call upon the various stakeholders to work on climate change and ensure that everyone is part of this. At this point, you were actually on track. We were supposed to launch the report, but I think I'll have to call you back with Mr. Nyambe, as well as yourself and the director, to just officially launch the report.
Even the environmental musician is singing.
This side also. This side is environmentally friendly. Yeah. Yeah, so right. Start. Great. Capture. Done. It's a climate change. Just come on back. Yeah, so thanks a lot. Yeah. Thanks. All right. Thank you.
We've officially launched the report and we'll be sharing the copies that we can take with us to our various offices. Yeah. So at this point, may I be allowed to call upon the following for a panel discussion just to give context to the report and all the presentations that we had before. So may I please call upon Ms. Tamika Haluindi, sorry, the program changed. May I please call upon Zanji Sinkala to be the moderator for the panel discussion. Kindly grab your seat and just align yourself there in front. Oh, I've noticed that the guest of honor has left. Yes. We were supposed to be upstanding instead of nice. I'm sure you'll forgive us. Yeah. So on the panel discussion, we have the Zambia Climate Change Network, and this is Ms. Kamisa Matepeta, not Mr., but Miss. Then we also have the CFMG representative, who's Mr. Japheth Sakala. And then we also have Mr. Vincent Kiamasenko. And when you hear names like Kiamasenko, start thinking of Banzolo, Bakabo. Our friends respect animals. So kindly make your way to your front. Come with your chair. Fortunately, they did not prepare for us in terms of the panel discussion. Good morning, everyone. Once again, thank you for attending this launch. And I think it was interesting for us to be able to hear some of the gaps that are there, the critical gaps in the, in climate financing. So we're just going to hear from some of the panelists today. We're going to ask certain questions, and then, of course, we'll start with some opening remarks, 1 minute opening remarks by each of them to just introduce themselves, and of course, show us the relevance of why they're on this panel. And then after that, I'll ask a few questions, and then we can open it up for plenary. So please jot down any questions that you may have right now, or maybe that may come up as the discussion unfolds. Okay, so we'll start with the Zambia Climate Change Network.
Okay, so my name is Kamisama Tepeta. I'm an assistant programs officer at the Zambia Climate Change Network. As a network, we spearhead a lot of, or rather majority of the NGOs under the climate change space. So that's why we're here, because we're a membership-based organization. We speak for some of our members, we speak with our members, because the voice is widespread. We have members across the country, from the east to the south, to the north, and the west. So I believe we're here because we have such a loud voice.
Okay, thank you so much. So we're going to move to Mr. Vincent Yamasengo from the Transparency Action Center.
Yes, I want to thank you. I'm a member of TAG, SEMPA, and indeed, before I joined TAG, the decentralized policy that you see 2015, I was among those that were designing the steps of acquiring a CFMG, although we didn't have a component of the rights for carbon, but we had the other components of where you transfer the rights like timber, harvesting, mushroom, and other enterprises. Then also, in my other capacity, as I said, I'm the founder of Vincent Green Environmental Foundation and a musician. Some of my songs that I have there are, one, The Shadow of an Axe lays across the forest. If you want to see the shadow of an axe, go in the forest, that's where you see. The other one, you cannot lose the trees, you cannot lose the forest. You start with the trees themselves. So that's the other song. So in this panel, I'm coming to share the rich experience that we have with communities and some policymakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to move to Mr. Sakara from the Community Forest Management.
Yeah, thank you, listeners. My name is Chapik Sakara. I'm the chairperson of CFMG Chikwe, that is East Province, but Semengo District and Chipanga District. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're now going to move to the Zambia climate change. And I'm just going to ask you, I think you've already spoken about your role. So we're going to understand what is that you do, the relevance of your work in the climate space. But I want to ask you, what are some of the advocacy issues that ZCCN has been spearheading relating to climate finance and carbon finance in Zambia, especially pertaining to the report that we've had? So given that we saw that presentation and people were able to grasp the information and realize some of the gaps, what are your advocacy issues?
Okay, from before the report, last year we had a meeting with House of Chiefs. We wanted to understand, because we were at the grassroots, we actually wanted to understand before applying to advocacy, we wanted to understand what the actual issues are. So what came out was that there are not enough laws that protect the people. So even as we were asked for input of the climate change bill earlier this year, we did take that into mind because most of these communities that are partaking often face oppression in terms of how much money comes to them. There's not enough transparency. So our advocacy mainly borders on transparency when it comes to finance, carbon trading, especially carbon trading, because most of these communities have lost their land rights because big chunks of their land have been taken. So when it comes to our advocacy, we're mainly on transparency and of course the community's land rights. We want the community to get their direct benefits, nothing less.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for that. So I'm going to move to Mr. Sakara.
Thank you.
So just reflecting on the findings and the recommendations, are you able to share your experience as a CFMG, which is a Community Forest Management Group member? And what are some of the issues that the CFMG has been working on to address the issues related to carbon finance?
Thank you. Thank you very much. The experiences and benefits which I'm going to share is number one, we followed the 7 steps to have a CFMG. So after we have followed these 7 steps, number one, awareness to the community, number 2, mapping, and the elections, a rate of recognition from the Forest Department, and then at this stage we are at the stage of agreement. We signed the forms for the agreement. So the experiences which are there in the community, they need help from the capital. What type of help? The work of the CFMG is to sensitize people awareness about carbon money. So, like in Chipure and the Kaselengwa, we have Mpoma CCA, which is 7,522 hectares. So, in 2017, we received from carbon money 44,000. That is 44,000 francs. Then, how we budget that money? We work with stakeholders. When we budgeting the money, the forest department, the health, the industries, the chief, the churches, we come together and make the budget, and then from there we break it into 4 times. So after we break that budget into 4 times, we take that budget to the chief, and the chief signs. After he has signed, then it's when we start the work. So for the 44,000, once we had received that money from credit funds, went to the community for awareness to tell them that we have received this money. So it is the community now in different places through their problems. Some, they will say that they will need water, boreholes. Some, they will say they will need beehives. Some are given soft loans for, e.g., example, soybeans, sunflower, groundnuts. So in 2017, we received 44,000. That's carbon credits money. In 2020, we received 553,000. And in 2022, we received 3,300,082. Why these figures were going up? It is because of conserving the nature. So what we have done, we have taken 65% of our money to the community. So we have sunk 29 boreholes, 1,300 beehives. We have given soft loans like soybeans, groundnuts, which in terms of some 20 kgs, 30 kgs. So that the CCA, which is 7,522 hectares, after they have seen that money, we have used it properly, then the community said we must increase the hectareage. And then we have another CCA, which is called Benjeri, which has 4,522 hectares, which is the total 12,004 hectares. So from there, this is where we are working together with the stakeholders and the communities. We give what the community wants in the communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think my follow-up question, before I get to the follow-up question, let me go to Mr. Temasiri. So working with the TAP, the Transparency Action Group, as well as being a stakeholder in the carbon financing sector, what are some of the issues and challenges that you've witnessed when it comes to implementing carbon projects?
Yes, thank you so much. I want to appreciate the chairs in the first place. You know, they have come at the right time before things would have gone in a wrong. Because what was normally happening is that when we started implementing the policy of 2015 of transferring rights to citizens, even when you follow the procedures that my brother here was trying to explain, you find that we did not have a component for carbon. It was not there. But carbon players also took advantage because currently in Zambia, we have two markets that involves carbon. We have got the compliance and we have a voluntary. But mostly the ones that we have in Zambia are voluntary. Maybe let me go to the extent of saying, if we had any compliance, we have a compliance where we did not participate, is maybe whereby a certain company, like Greenway, you remember those which Kasanka brought, those Greenway cook stoves, you remember them? Yes, those were actually the carbon credits that were being sold, but they were just like a free service. Meanwhile, the company that benefited from that was the company that manufactured those cook stoves and the company that was emitting. So they enjoyed that money at that particular rate. The reason why they could capture your NRCs and other things was to avoid the double counting, which is an abnormal thing, which is not a correct thing to do in carbon markets. So that's what they were trying to avoid, so that every carbon credit is retired through issuing of that cook stove. But how many benefited? We did not benefit, but we preserved the environment. Now, the one we have in Zambia, a voluntary market one, the current one, is where now the communities begin to benefit, like my brother was saying. Now, what are some of the challenges that we have seen from exactly what you are saying? We have seen that establishing a CFMG is very expensive. That is the thing. Communities cannot. Sometimes communities are not even interested. But we thank TIZ, we thank you for giving us enough information. We find that some carbon players will just go to the community because they're interested in carbon. They know that the entry point is the CFMG. Because a 1 hectare, like in Northwestern Province, about 150 tons that it can produce. So maybe per ton, I don't know how much it is. So they need a very chunky land in thousands so that it can make sense to become a project that is viable. So what do? They will go to the communities and tell them, do you want a CFMG? The community will say, what is that CFMG? They will explain to them this and that. Then they say, we'll sponsor you all those 5 steps until to the level where you reach Form 7. And then when they reach that Form 7, you know, now you can imagine how the community will be captured. They will say, okay, when you reach at this Form 7, this is where the funders will even get that Form 7. It will be for us. Instead of leaving the community to decide, whoever will come with maybe the highest price of carbon, but they will be entangled into that one. So, okay, you can get it. You're just interested for carbon. These other rights, you can sell them to other, for mushroom, you can sell them to any other organization, but you're just interested in carbon. So this is where the gaps are. Now I want to thank, what is our role in TAG? In TAG now we have seen that those are the gaps. But the communities, we are trying to simplify so that before the community goes to make such contracts that will last for 30 years or many years, they must first of all understand in the simplest. So in the tag, what we have done, we have TIZ, is that we have started simplifying the language that the communities will understand. If they want whether to establish a CFMG or if they are not interested, it can just be like that. So maybe that's what the role at the moment. So the challenge that we are having is that there is no lack of information. Even the government does not give communities money to establish CFMGs. It is all open to anyone who can come and fund. But those that are coming to fund, some find that they've got some hidden agendas, which communities may not know. And it ends up at Form 7, where those rights are given. And once you sign, it's a document that you sign, maybe it will last for 30 years or 20 years. You can imagine that long period of time. Thank you so much. That's what I
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Kenesengo. Speaking of gaps or speaking of challenges, I'm going to go back to Mr. Sikara. So you spoke about some of the profits from,
Yes.
the support financing, and you spoke about millions, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
You gave some examples. You talked about soft loans, a lot of work that you are doing from, the carbon financing. But are there any corruption risks around that? So have there been situations where maybe there's been mismanagement of the money? Have there been situations like that? What are the corruption risks?
I thank TIZ, the officers from Chipata coming to our chief dome to sensitize us, giving us capacity building, awareness, and how to use the money, the budget, and from at the beginning of the month, we have a planning meeting. At the end, we look what we have done and what we have achieved. So, speaking about corruption, there is no corruption, but there are challenges like the forest department, we have the CCA, where there are rules to cut trees. They issue receipts to go and cut the trees. In the CCA, those are challenges. So they say no. Us as the government, you have been told by the Lusaka, what I don't know, the big officers. So that we should issue the receipts. The same government is saying that let's conserve, and as communities, we are conserving. So this is one of the challenges. And the other challenge, it is the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. So it is what my friend has said, the other part knows what is going, but the other part does not know what is going in part B. I cannot mention none. So I think, yeah.
So we're going to move to a representative from Zambia Climate Change Network. You spoke about a lot of your initiatives, the cheap ones. So people to be able to understand the concept of carbon financing, so forth. And of course, sensitization is a big thing. It's a big issue. I think Mr. was spoke about that as well. But I want to find out whether you are gender mainstream in this whole process. So how does it work when maybe women want to spearhead the process? So, they want to take the lead on some of these things, but their chiefs don't. And of course, customary law and customary norms don't really allow them to voice out their opinions. How does that work? So do you only work with men? Do you also work with women? Do you gender mainstream?
Yes, actually, thank you for that question. We are deliberate when it comes to gender mainstream. Majority of our projects look at majority of our participants, or rather beneficiaries, being women. So we are very deliberate. Going to the public, we actually tell them we want 70% women, and then the rest can be. So very, very deliberate. We understand that women don't have a voice in this community, so we make sure that as we go, because you really can't meet your objectives by leaving certain people behind, especially being that climate change affects them the most as they take care of all households. So you want to make sure that from the onset you can move them and not leave them behind. So we're very deliberate about that.
Okay, so is it a process in which you have to speak to their husbands, or the chief has to facilitate?
Okay, so when we go onto the ground, we do state our objectives, that where this project really caters for the majority, or we'll just say we deliberately just want a lot of women here because we want women to have a voice. And chiefs these days are actually understanding that women don't have a voice. The laws may not favor women, but there is that understanding on to say, okay, you can have a lot of women, but please do invite the men as well so that the men don't feel left out. So instead of saying, okay, 100% women, we'll say, okay, 70 women, and then the rest get it.
Thank you so much. I'll have my last question, my last follow-up to Mr. Kema Sengo before you give your closing remarks, and then we open it up for the audience. Mr. Kema Sengo, so this issue on carbon financing is it's something that's quite technical. A lot of people don't really understand the process, and it's good for trainings like this, and it's good for convenings like this, where people are able to learn some of these things. However, there've been some reports. I'm a journalist by profession, and I've reported on carbon financing before. There was, I think earlier this year, there was a scandal by Shell. I don't know if I'm sure you know Shell company. Yes, the global company. So there was a scandal that about a staggering 5.7 million credits were devoid of any authentic carbon dioxide reduction. So now, given this, there have been a lot of concerns that carbon financing and carbon credits is all a facade. So there's nothing that really comes out of it, because people just want to, there are certain people who want to continue doing what it is they're doing, and others who maybe want to benefit in a certain way. I'll leave it at that. So what would you say to non-believers of carbon financing and the whole process of carbon credits?
Exactly. Thank you so much. First of all, let's come back to the point. Do you have what carbon credits in Zambia? We have. We have what we shall call carbon offsets, because our trees are still holding onto that carbon inside, isn't it? But the problem is that our forests are not designated in such a way that they can begin to sell, because there's no regulated framework that will turn our carbon to say, this is what we are doing. So as we are talking right up now, as we have kept our forest intact, we are solving, even up to now, we are solving the current situation. But the problem is our carbon credits are not certified. They are not certified to be made to qualify for money or in other things. Now, why is it sometimes it sounds like an hoax and things like that? This is just an air money. You understand? This money is nowhere. You understand? It's just like money in the air. And if money is in the air, expect corruption, except things that you don't understand, that some people will take advantage of. Okay, let us give an example. Us in Africa, we say we are not going to extend our land for farming so that we make money, isn't it? We are not going to grow our economy as Africa or as Zambia because we want to preserve the forest for a Nokia company or Samsung, which is making computers to become big. As we say, okay, let us suffer for them, but we are on the same global world, isn't it? Then as we suffer them, they make more money. Then they say, from the little profit we are making, we are giving you this. You understand that scenario we are trying to do? Now, do you have got enough mechanism to say they are giving us money out of what? Do we know the profits that they are making? We don't understand. Are they giving us the real value of the inputs that we are putting on to conserve? Is it what they are giving us? Because as we have forgone what can make us also great. But then they have invested into that. So you find that it's like a social corporate responsibility. When you say, no, this company or us who are coming from Northwest, we tell First Quantum to say, no, First Quantum should give us a social corporate responsibility. On what? Social corporate responsibility is done out of a goodwill, isn't it? Yes. It's not an obligation. As what we should claim is we should tell government, tax money to do our roads from First Quantum, not social corporate responsibility. But this is like Fry Emirates, who pollute the whole sky, you can imagine. And then they choose a community forest for our colleagues here, giving them a 44,000 US dollars. No, certain quarter. How much money have they made? Now you can imagine. And this we also go and do Kabo. They will do to my this, which even the CDF can do. So you can understand how the things are. So to me, I understand that commitments are not obligatory. It's like they're doing the shell can do out of its goodwill to say, okay, we shall give them, or we shall not. So that's how the scenario is made on that particular.
Thank you so much for that. So I'm just going to have 1 minute closing remarks. I
would like to thank the Transparency International, Chipata Lusaka, for the building they are doing in our chief. Because me, I'm total a villager. I'm coming from a village. And because of feeling 1 minute, 2 minutes, so since I'm with Mr. Kamanga and with Mr. Zulu, I've learned how to speak English. I didn't go to school, but I know how to write, how to interpret English. That is the truth of the matter. So, when you are dealing with carbon credits, please deal with the villagers, the communities like me, because we'll give you proper information. Not the people who are in the office. They are not on the ground, as we are on the ground. Have you listened, madam? Tomorrow and after tomorrow will be the teacher in Transparency International. So I want to thank our partners like the Forest Department. Komako is one of the partners. I also thank them for looking at the market of carbon. I say thank you very much. But before I end, I have one song from the village, which I will sing right up away here in Nyanja, and then Mr. Zulu, Mr. Kamanga will interpret it. Tisalazepo apa tisalazepo apa ni ubale bati aizeti tisalazepo apa tisalazepo apa ni ubale pamene paonongeka tisalazepo apa pamene paonongeka ni ubale. That is the voice of Chipata. I can even sing dance ngoma and the big dance. Thank you very much, audience. Yeah.
Yes, my last remarks is on it here is that, these three issues of carbon, it's the areas are too big and there are a lot of communities in it. But you can imagine, say, 102,000 hectares. That is a lot of a chunk of piece of land. You find that some communities are on the other side, other communities may be also on the other side, others may be inside. So to me, what I'm requesting for it is that, in Zambia, we have got this type of funding. We find that we fund bigger. As we go into the community, it becomes the impact will be less. Meanwhile, you hear that this project was funded, but the impact is it's more like a farming. If we can make it like this, whereby we spend a lot of time at the grassroots. If you like, for example, like the information that TIZ has, if we can go and share with the people so they open it, so they understand that what they're about to lose or to engage themselves in, it's either they will lose out or they will get. It needs a lot of interaction. So let us not look at the DSAs will be too much, what and what. Those costs for a while. If the government needs to fund you, let it fund you nicely, so that people can go there for 3 days, they interact with people, just like I've seen the impact on Iran. Iraq is doing fine, and it has helped a lot also in this particular thing. Then also coming to sharing mechanism, it is very sad to tell you that sometimes this like 44 million, 44,000, and in 2017, that is 44,000, which is coming from. Now, I can imagine managing the land, which is about how many hectares?
7,522.
That money cannot even manage to give the forest guy.
Yes.
Does it? It's saying that nothing. Now you can imagine the job that they do. It's more like zero. So to me, I'm requesting that we need a lot of engagement, even with the government. As I've seen, to me, 15 government, then 55 communities, then 30% has gone to an investor. So to me, total in all is that the investor is 30,000. Government has gotten 70%. Because government is the one of the people, isn't it? So if the government has gotten 70%, it should invest more into it. Thank you so much. That's my contribution.
Closing remarks from Zambia Climate Change Network. First of all, I'm looking at this. First of all, I'd like to thank TIG for this icebreaker. I'm going to call it an icebreaker because this is just the beginning, not the end. I'm looking at this room and I see a lot of partners, both from the private, government, and of course NGOs. There's a lot to do with the coming of the climate change bill being enacted. So it would be at this, we'll be doing our communities an injustice by letting this conversation end in this room. It's very cardinal for us to pick it up with our communities, ensuring that they get what belongs to them. Our communities, those who are hearing, 44,000, it can barely do anything for them, especially if they're talking about 7,000. Yeah, but about that much, that's a lot. There's a lot more money that they are owed. That should show you how much these communities, for lack of better terms, are being swindled out of their own resources. So for us in this room, it's cardinal for us to gain more understanding on climate financing, carbon trading, so that when we go to the ground, we're able to explain these things properly to our community, and they're able to participate with the full knowledge. If it's possible to take away the middleman in between the communities and carbon trading, let's do so that the community can get everything it is owed. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. So the deliberate strategy I had here was to let them give their closing remarks first, so they can pour out their hearts, and then I'll open it up for question and answer, because I didn't know how many people would ask questions and how long that would take. So are there any questions that people have? Okay. Okay, and contributions as well. So I'll start with you. Maybe you can just introduce yourself again,
and then
My name is Linda, and I'm from Makande, Journalism. I did a story on carbon trading. So I would like to just get a bit of understanding. According to the story that I see, just like everyone else is concerned about how much people receive during when they are doing the oxidation of carbon, they don't know really how much is made out there and how much is given. So I don't know, maybe we can go putting it in the bill. Is there a way we can maybe put something in the bill looking at, because I've seen this is like a big business right now in Zambia, where people just these investors in carbon, they go to these communities, talk to them, they start giving them money, even before they actually start selling the carbon. According to them, like some of the companies I've spoken to, they don't have the market yet, but they have the resources to set up the company and start giving people like 500, and then maybe they sign up for the project to start. Once the bill is enacted, is there a way maybe you can put something in one of those clauses where this thing can be reversed, because you find because of hunger, like right now, we've got so much hunger, people will sign up and say, no, we're going to start offsetting carbon in these areas. They sign up for 30 years, and then because it's not only in projects that money is being given, even in households where maybe someone is given a 500, another family 500. So maybe for 30 years, some of these homes are being given 500. I think it's not fair. So maybe is there a way once the bill is enacted, maybe some of these projects that were signed for can be reversed, and so that people can really understand what's going on and that they can benefit more than what they actually have.
Okay, thank you, Linda. So before there are any responses, we'll get more questions and then please you have a question.
Okay, clarity. The trade negotiations that we're talking about, and who highlighted that they actually give you money. So in the process of giving money, you negotiate how much the profit is, or they are the ones who actually stipulate how much is supposed to be given to you. I just want to clarify on that. And for that, I wanted to find out that you stated that you actually 70% of the projects are actually taken for students. You have the monitoring mechanism to see whether women actually doing some of these projects after you go back. Because I understand these are projects and they have the time frame. So you have a monitoring mechanism to check that they are actually the needs.
My name is Amanda Lawrence from Colombia. Yes. The issue of carbon credit is a circular journey work. We, in the rural communities, we are passing it the hardest way. Parliament would make the law that the forest should be conserved. But the state government is issuing licenses indiscriminately to traders who go in the rural outskirts to do a greater harm to the environment. Now, when those at the grassroots try to hit back in terms of trying to advise, they say we are set. Now, how best can we engage government against this syndrome so that perhaps they can respect the laws they make, and also we at the grassroots we can follow and perhaps succeed in curbing the scourge of damaging our environment.
Thank you. Any other questions or contributions? Yes.
my concern is the education that has been given to communities regarding vulnerability. I noticed some very substantial private. And whatever they discuss, then they want to present a different picture of what is happening in the community. But the community as a speaking would consent to those negotiating that they are having those discussions outside government. Then the same thing for companies in the community support what companies support that, and then they decide to my question is, how much education is given to people regarding carbon credit itself? If I put that given, and what is the response? I noticed also in the report, the recommendation was finished. But I also wondering whether, before they came up with that recommendation, they had waited to address the program, put it in that recommendation.
Thank you. Yeah, Bob Deacon, the partnership transparency. I don't know whether this is a question to the panel or the report, but one thing I missed was the aspect of boards, particularly the capacity of the agency to protect and whoever else would be involved and investigate possible misappropriation of funds or other aspects of the use of private landscape would be deleterious in the way that we describe it. Now, that's not to take away in any sense at all from the community aspect of things and from an organization that supports citizen engagement with the Hill. But I'm just the question whether the capacity of the law enforcement agencies is adequate to deal with what is a very complex issue. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So maybe we can have a second round of questions, but let's get responses first. So I remember the first question was from Linda, second was from Matilda, third was from the man here, fourth Francis, fifth Paul. For whether we can reverse the deals that were made prior to the climate change deal, that one I'm not sure of, because also now you have to look at get some of the agreements that were made. Of course, the climate change bill allows for these communities again to come back and sit down, have a conversation. So maybe not the entire document, but I think certain parts of them can be reversed, because also we, as a country, we need to have somebody that can interpret how much carbon we offset. But for as long as it's the company we in agreement with is the one that's interpreting this, they'll always tell us figures that are lower, just so what we are collecting from them is also lower. So until we have, there's still that gap where we need somebody that properly interprets how much carbon we're offsetting, how much money that has translated into. Okay, I don't know if I. Are these different questions or the same question?
Oh, no, they're not.
Okay, yes.
According to the answer for the number two, we are just given the money, but we don't know what percent they have bought that company. That is the essence. So, like a 44,000 went, no, here you was the same your money is 44,000. From what and what percent? We don't know up now. So, that question, no education has been taken place. You know, the counting of carbon credits. No education, even me as a CFFG, nothing, 0%. Thank you.
Yes, let me go back to the presentation, the research that he has done. If you remember, it talked about, is it carbon, somewhere, is it ranchers or whatever? Carbon, huh? Yes, carbon cowboys. That word I've marked it so much, I've come to like it. First of all, people should understand that, I may have been responding also to what the big man said. There are three types of carbon projects. So we can do a different project, they can do a different project. There's what they call afforestation, isn't it? Afforestation, deforestation. If the land has been without anything, then you replant. That means that type of project is that you can even be given money in advance for the credits that particular forest will. Then there's what you call improved forest management. Improved forest management allows the community to harvest the timber. It's under carbon credit. You can harvest the timber because to that one, what they believe is that the smaller the tree, the higher chances of sequestrating carbon. The more it gets carbon from. But these bigger trees, some of them are being slowed. Others are not even doing anything. So that's a way of improving it actually, so that it generates more credit. So they allow timber harvesting. I think that's what people should do. Then there's what you call lead press. Lead press is a very strict one. They don't burn even grass. Don't even cut anything. It has to remain the way it is. So communities should know what type of project are we engaging into ourselves. Is it RED plus or is it improved forest management type of, or is it afforestation? Once they know this, then they're not going to fall into a trap. Now, there's a question that they ask that, do the people know? Is it practical to measure carbon? Yes, it's practical. Because carbon, you can go with a community like CFMG. You can measure, the bigger the tree, the better. But timber, like if it's an improved forest management, timber does not emit anything. Because when a person has harvested timber, where do they take it? They're going to make a furniture, isn't it? So this furniture has got carbon in there. Has the carbon gone back into the atmosphere? Has it emitted? Nothing. But if the person who goes there and harvests for charcoal, what has happened to that carbon? As it has gone back to the atmosphere. So I find that when timber, although people say no, timber does not contribute to high levels of carbon in the atmosphere. But what does that is mostly charcoal and a bit of agriculture. So to me, what I will encourage our colleagues is that when you are forming a CFMG and then they say, sell us those rights, ask them, what type of rights are we committing ourselves? Is it RED plus or improve the forest management or whatever? Otherwise, if you go for RED plus, you'll be need for it. You're not going to harvest anything from there. But if you go for improved, that's why you see the foresters are coming in to give a bit of license. But the people are supposed to do that license. It's you who are supposed to say, oh, we have got enough timber, we want to harvest our timber. So those who want to buy concessionaires, they'll come into it. But if you don't know anything, like you said, the people from forest, they'll harvest it on your behalf. It may not even be the government, because government gave you rights, isn't it? But people from forest will bring them into yours and harvest. Then that money will not even go to the government. It will go into the individual pockets to build houses. Okay.
No. And the question remains, yes. Yes, we do monitoring and evaluation of our projects just to ensure we're meeting our project deliverables. Because we can't say no, we have 70% women, and then when we do monitoring and evaluation, it finds out that you only have 10%. Then we're not meeting our targets, are we? So we do this annually so that we prepare as we're going into the next year, we're able to tell, okay, what did we do in the previous year? What do we need to do better to attract more women participants? And just to realign our strategies, see what we need to drop, see what we need to adopt, see which partners we need to work with, see what projects we need to pick up that better benefit women to encourage them to come and participate. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I also know that her question was leaning towards whether women are if they get to
Okay.
you get to assess that impact.
Yes, we actually do. For right now, there's the current activity that we're doing where it's mainly on study stables. So we have a lot of what we're calling elite farmers who are women. We deliberately put that most of them are women. So we have about 4, of which 3 are women. 1 is a man. So we want to see how that will work. With this one is just pilot for this year, and then next year see how better we can do it. If we'll need to involve more women, or how better we can improve the way the women are adopting this particular activity.
Okay, great. And I'll allow Kamita to respond to Bob's question.
Okay. Thank you very much. So there were 2 points I thought I would respond to. I think there was an issue around the price that carbon credits fetch on the international market. I think in the research we do highlight that there is that price volatility and uncertainty. So there's no fixed price for the carbon credits that are generated, but also recognizing that setting up a carbon project can be a massive undertaking in terms of finances required to ensure you meet the multiple standards for a carbon project, even for forest initiatives. So we do recognize that project proposers and developers invest a lot of money to develop a carbon project. And so that's why I think even in the case of Chipata, when you look at the benefits that they accrued as a community, they were slowly increasing, which means that more and more the project was able to sequester certain amounts of carbon credits, and therefore the developer was getting more value from the carbon credits. The issue though there, and what the findings show, is that most communities don't know the total gross value of the carbon credits sold, and I think PS mentioned to that. What they do know is the benefits that they've so in the case of when you received the 3 million in 2003.
In 2020, 580,000, 2022, 3 million,
yes.
382,000.
Yeah, so even of that 3 million, the question is of what? What did the project proposer make?
We don't know.
Yes, the communities don't know. Yes, but just recognizing that there's that price volatility and uncertainty in the carbon market in terms of carbon credits. To Bob's question, the simple answer is no. We tried as much as possible in the analysis and the research, kind of look at what is the current context and map up corruption risk. In the back of our minds, we do know that there's a role that law enforcement agencies play, but the assumption we had is they haven't played a role in terms of investigating crimes related specifically to private finance, especially carbon finance. Of course, when you look at climate finance, especially from domestic resources, that would be more like it's budgetary support. And if you look at it broadly, it's part of taxpayers' money. But then to narrow down and say climate finance funds, I think that would be a specific audit or investigation that might be done. One of the activities under our project is also to try and engage the Office of Auditor General to see if there is room for a specific audit around carbon finance and climate finance. It's a very technical field. We acknowledge that, and I think PS also spoke to that. But we do know that there has been increasing interest and research in the sector, particularly climate finance and carbon finance. There was a report that was done by the Parliamentary Committee on Environment, Land and Natural Resources, getting that Parliamentary Committee correctly. And when you look at their findings, I think it kind of also mirrors what some of our research findings highlights in the report. So I think there is room for more engagement, particularly with the school audit institutions, to see how we can move forward on some of these issues that have been identified that discussed, but also recognizing that it's a very technical build on it, from especially when you look at carbon balance, very technical issues.
So we're just going to have the last question, I'm guessing. The last, okay, the last two questions, and then we can wrap up.
Okay, thank you so much. Mine, this is on the comments from the report made that the net product and also lack of accountability. And the PS actually, as I say, they are working on some of the data because lack of monitoring and lack of accountability, it's a recipe for fraud. So I also want things that kind that can talking here. Then also, I'm also concerned on in the report it came out that there's lack of for my sister. Just to know from my two brothers there from Kasempa. But yes, let me know how many women are on that decision table. The inclusion of women, let's be practical from us who are here, so that we can support what she's talking about 70 women and 30 men. Then the last one, I just wanted to know, maybe to go to who's responsible for, because in the report read about the carbon, which is not well stated, it's understated, overstated. Who is responsible for accurate measurements of these credits? The under and over. Thank you.
Okay, the last question.
Thank you very much. It's more of a comment. Just to encourage everyone that perhaps we need to look at things way beyond what we're discussing here today. You see, to listen to the discussions, there are a lot of technical issues, but where are we picking them up from? Looking at the registers, there's 5 years and above, that's what I was seeing. When the Ministry of Education is coming up with their curriculum, we need to take interest. Because issues of carbon, they are taught in schools, but just for examination. If we are concerned with such, then we can push that a little further, that after learning about the carbon cycle, there's still something that will come that we may either need to preserve or check that it's not mismanaged. So if we're going to remain in this space, then we'll talk about this, the next group will still come and just talk about what we discussed. So they say, imiti kurayompa, which is the center of what we're discussing. If the trees that are growing are the future, then the children that are learning about the trees are also the future. They will understand the basics, and by the time they reach our age, even when they talk of finance, they will be a little bit technical. I thought I could just make that comment.
Okay, great. We can have the responses and so.
Yes, for example, let me comment on something. There's something that I've observed in the African countries, especially on the, if you are going to get a lot from carbon credits again, we're supposed to be united as Africa. We develop our own standardization of that carbon. You understand? Because Americans are united, they have got their own, they are united. The Scandinavians are united, they have united, they formed their own. Chinese this time they have made their own. Koreans have also made their own. But if I ask Africa, is it thinking of making its own, where they can raise the standard? We are not, we are still fragmented. So the people go to COP70. They want to do COP1, COP2. You people come from Sakasi, you come from rural areas, you don't go there. But if you have gone there and submitted the reviews, they hear it on the ground. But you come from Busaka here. As you go to those COP, 27, 28. This is say we're going to have 29. As long as you'll be continuing going like that, we'll reach even 100. Go to 100. Nothing is going to come. So issues are things are happening on the ground. Some of these projects are making actually other people vulnerable. I want to tell you the truth. A woman depends on mushroom to feed the family. Then the project will say no. I just want to give it. What have you done? Some farmers in rural areas, they need to expand. Ours have got acidic rains, like when you go to Ikeleng, as I'm talking to you. Ikeleng is extending in largest portions of land. At the source of Zambia, there's Ikeleng community forest. It has been neglected from the time it was made. I've tried to apply funds for it, no one pays. I feel good when I hear, no, in Lusaka, the setting is too much. I just say, yeah, as long as the people at the source are neglected, you will feel the impact. Yes, you feel it. Because those people are doing it, are trying to, they are not funding. But then when they start extending their fields to do deforestation, and then the water levels are down, then again we start complaining, no, the challenge is that you have neglected. The source of Zambezi, as I'm telling you, if you didn't know, it is at a verge of corruption. Yes. Imagine, Zambezi is gone. Let me just say like that. Why? Because people think conservation of forests should be in Lusaka. Money for conservation should be circulating around Lusaka. You forget the source. Those are the issues that we should get. Now, to me, in conclusion, I will say, what is important, let us educate our people. Conservation, they have got the heart to conserve. Actually, they do. The people bring confusion to them are us. Even the people who are cutting charcoal when you go to Northwestern, it's not the people who cut charcoal. It's the people here who know where to sell charcoal at the exorbitant price. Those are going to the villages to tell them, can you harvest? Also humiliating them actually. They get nothing from that charcoal. They say, can you do a HVD for me? Then I'll pay you so much. But we know the person who's going to get a lot of money is the person who's coming from Lusaka. So let us just educate them more. They actually are very good people. They are custodian of this environment. When we give them enough support, they will even stop charcoal banners from Lusaka to go and entice them to do those. You know, those are the contributions.
Thank you so much for your questions, your contributions, your comments. Thank you to the panelists for your openness, your eloquence as you spoke and as you participated in all of this. And we've come to the end of this session. So we are just going to have closing remarks by Ms. Sandy Sikazwe, who's there. So we can go back to our seats.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
There was an unanswered question. So
okay. Yeah. Okay. You can go ahead.
Okay. So. And actually, people are saying that when you look at the voluntary carbon market rate, there are a number of registries which project developers or investors can register a project on. So to do that, they have to meet the standards of the different registries. There's a registry called Vera, I think, and the gold standard, which have their own specifications in terms of carbon projects and the standards that it should meet to qualify and to get and sell those carbon credits. So the investor usually also invests their resources, for instance, when setting up a carbon project, to do the baseline in terms of what is the situation before, to do the calculations and the projections in terms of if the assumptions of the project document are made, this is how much carbon they will sequester in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. So there are all those assumptions made. Those calculations are also typically audited by independent and external auditors, so that when the time the project, for instance, after 1 year or 2 years now does their measurements to see how much carbon has been sequestered or offset, those are now submitted to the different registries. And then based on that, there are companies who typically need this carbon offset. So it could be an airline company, it could be an oil company, and then they're also looking in the different registries to see what available credits they can buy, and then depending also on the projects that they also as a company might identify of interest to them or something that they might want to do. So at that point, that's where I would say that the price is set. But like I said, it's very volatile. One of the reports that we reviewed actually alluded to the fact that some carbon credits, particularly in the forest and nature, face a lower price than other carbon credits, for instance, renewable energy projects, particularly not in the global south, but in the global north, fetch a higher price than carbon forest projects. So the price is then set through the registries, and then of course people interested in buying those credits. So the corruption risk there, or the understatement or overstatement, based on the literature review, is that in some instances, some investors might overstate how much carbon credits they are making for a project, and this can tie back to the baseline situation. So, for instance, an investor or project developer can worsen the baseline situation so that it looks like a lot has been done for the project, and there's that risk of overstatement, particularly if the MRV is weak. And then the understatement of revenue comes in because communities typically only get the amount that is due to them. So, for instance, if the community is paid 500,000 kwacha, the question is of what? Is this really the 55%? Because for most carbon projects, the project developer does not disclose that this is the total value of sales that we have made from selling these carbon credits. I think as Pierce alluded to, in the pilot project for the Eastern Jurisdiction or Landscape Project, which is funded by the World Bank, when you read their projects proposals, I think it's encouraging to note that they actually try and do an estimation in terms of this is how much carbon that we will sell, and this is how much in terms of kwacha, this will be the amount of carbon, and this is the amount of revenue that we make, and then they have that benefit sharing plan. Of course, there is the provision that this the assumption price set in that project proposal might change, but overall, at least it gives you a picture and idea in terms of this is how much the project will take as a whole. So even when you do the calculations of 55% to the community, 30% to the project proposer or investor, developer, and the 50% to government, you will at least have a working figure to verify those amounts.
We've come to the end of our launch or our meeting, and I'm not the one giving it. No, I'm not. So I would like to invite Mr. Kamanga, who is the member from Jakarta, to give us the closing remarks.
Yes.
Have been reminded, and I think it's the right person. I've been reminded that we need to translate the beautiful song that was sung. Yeah, but unfortunately, you should have invited the guitarist. Yeah, so Mr. Kamanga, just if you can just highlight the audience in terms of what the song was about and what he was pledging for or advocating for, and then you can give us the closing remarks.
Okay. So what he meant in his song was that we should continue working together despite the difficulties that we'll be going through. Was for them a good example of what they are doing there. So basically that's what it means. Because songs you can use so many ways, but it just means one you don't see. So basically it's saying working together is good, doing things together is good, and so much that as we go ahead, then we will see ourselves
improving in whatever we want. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think all protocols have already been observed in this house. I must say that the launch of the report has come definitely at the right time, looking at what is happening now, and with the Ministry of Green Economy in place. I think that's what has excited most of the communities where we are coming from to get involved in whatever we are talking about, the carbon and climate change. And basically because we have been affected by the same climate change, now we have seen that climate change is real. So, but what I want to say is that we still have a long way to go, because as we have heard from the highlights and as we read from the report, we will agree that we have a lot of gaps in these areas. And dealing with the community or communities is very difficult situation, because one, here is somebody from Chikube, and they are relying on firewood in order for them to do whatever they do at home. And you tell that person to stop collecting firewood from the same areas which they are protecting. Without an alternative, how is he or she going to stop doing that? So we also really need to put in place some mechanisms that are going to help those that collect something from there. I heard one of the panelists saying maybe planks do not give out emissions, but sometimes they do, because we get those remains and put them on fire, and what comes out is what we call the emissions. So whatever we do with some wood, they have still some effect. Then also I want to mention here that I think the issuance of licenses for those that are cutting trees for charcoal, even harvesting timber, there are a lot of I think some what I would call mistakes, in the sense that the chiefs are complaining in that once a license is given to me as Kamanga to go and to harvest the timber or to go and do the production of charcoal, they may not put their specified places where they are going to do that. So even if he comes from Chipata to go to Jumbe, for example, and when he shows the receipt to the chief or to any of the indunas for the chief there, what are they going to do? And I think amongst the traditional ceremonies the head of state have attended to, some chiefs mentioned this to say, we have this problem with the licenses you give. And when you ask some forest officers, they will tell you that we are given targets in a month to make. And therefore, there's nothing that we can do, because it is also policy for us. And what I'm hoping is that the bill which PS has alluded to is going to try and highlight some of these things which are also going to help us. But if what I'm mentioning here about the licenses will not be there, then we'll still have a problem. But we will still have to see how best we can do that one. You know, chiefs, what the chiefs say is that if, for example, I'm given a license, I should go through the chief's palace to say, I've been sent here or I've been given permission to come and do this harvesting of timber or and so on. But you find that they will just be found in the forest. So even if they are found there, and you just show the license, and the chief will have nothing to say. So they feel that they are not being part of what they are doing in preserving the forest or encouraging their people not to destroy these forests there. So there's need that also something is put in place so that they should be reporting before they go into the reserved forest. Although also what they will fear is that when you don't go empty-handed, something must be done as you go there. So that is another hiccup which we are going to find. Then on the lighter note, some of you might have heard some years back, a few years back, that the government of Malawi had banned some houses along the border areas that time. That is the forest area which I mentioned, the Kaleza and the Nyausi in Chief Changes area. Now those forests have been preserved. And if you heard recently, about 2 weeks ago, there were some elephants that came from Kasungu to go that. It's because of those forests that now have thickened. So those elephants are using those forests as transit areas to come into Zambia from Kasungu game reserves. Now we have a lot of these delicacies for our colleagues from Northern Province, the baboons and the monkeys. Quite a number of them are there. And also, we have a lot of hyenas in the hills. And we have put quite a number of beehives there. And those also they intend to, or we intend to apply for what we have come to discuss here, because I'm part of that community also myself. So this is what I can say. Then I must say that TIZ, I think if there are some areas where I'm part of TIZ, we have made some impacts, is through our tax. Because I think quite a number of things which have been done by our tag members, the results are what you are seeing here, including the panelists, whichever you saw how they elaborated themselves. Language is not a barrier, but what was important is the message that was delivered here, like you heard. So I think we can still do a lot. We can as well do the introduction into other districts, so that like PS said, we need to do a lot, and this is where we can do a lot. Then the last part is what can even educate us more is some exchange visits, because the panelists here, I think they were limited to explain whatever they are doing. But if there were some exchange visits and we do on a one-to-one discussion, we can learn a lot from each other. I think that you can do or can go a long way. Then with these few words, if there were a few, I would like to I want to officially close the launch of this beautiful program we had from this morning up to now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kabanga. At this point, allow me to ask Mr. Malumbe to give us a prayer to pray for the food we're going to have for lunch, and also for the closing.
Mr. Kabanga, please, when we finish, we open prayer and you are ready to report. Our eyes are closed. Thank you, Lord, for the performance. We can ask. Lord, we want to ask that all that have been discussed is something that we can meditate, how best we can move towards that. Now we have reached the moment of the end. Thank you. We are then going to ask for charity back to our presentation. We are going to go and implement that of what we have studied. Lord, we are going to have our new 3 minutes time. We ask you to bless that food, bless the hands of prepare that food. Lord, ask that would be food that nourish us. Yeah. That we will not forget to pray for the energies for the many other people that we don't afford. Today, is to provide for them in a special way as well. But we will thank you for these moments and moments that we can only say for now in our lives and everything that we do. Be with us, bless us, guide us.
Thank you, Mr. Malumbe, for that closing prayer and praying for lunch as well. Just a reminder, if you've not filled in the register, kindly see me so that you can see it, because because there were some requests that we sent some of the presentations that we did. So I think Tamika and I will make an effort to send